So what we'll do is we'll start with you, Mary, because you're the elder stateswoman, right? And you remember way back to a very interesting time in Waterford, when people lived in tenement houses. So could you tell us about that?
Well, we just came out of a tenement house. Like, we had 2 rooms, which one was the bedroom for, there was me, Paddy, Anne, and my mother was pregnant on Sammy. And there was the 4 of us, 3 of us, like my mother and father, and in the one room, they had another room then which was kitchen, sitting room, everything else. No bathrooms, no toilets, no running water, nothing like that, you know. So they were hard times. So when we came to John's Park, it was like a palace.
Before you moved, right? So how many families were in? There was 4 houses there, wasn't there?
There was 4 big houses, and I think the story went there was 52 families.
Okay.
Now I know.
Give us some of the family names, because that's really interesting.
Some of them moved to John's Park. There was the Moylers, Andy Moyler and Aggie, and they had, I don't know how many they had at the time now, probably 2, I'd say 2 or 3. They moved to John's Park as well. One of the Mordens moved, Joni Butler, she married Bill Morden. They lived out here as well, up at the top. Trying to remember all the names now. There was Swift, Mrs. Swift was there. I remember Mrs. Swift. I remember the Whites, Val White. You ever remember hearing Val White? His mother lived there. Who else? There was Kennedys there. They didn't have any children. They were an old couple. There was the Sheridans that lived there. There was a lot of people, you know, 52 families. Like, some of them I wouldn't know.
And that was just right behind St. Patrick's Church.
Yeah. I was only actually talking to Roy Daniels. I got him in a taxi the other day, and he remembered us living. Well, he said, I don't remember, but I had spoke to him before about it, and he had spoke to his brother, and he said, yeah, he remembers us. They were living down, their father was in the bank or something down in O'Connell Street, and they used to live, and who lived across the road from us in a house next to St. Patrick's Church. Well, kind of a flat, I suppose. Tom Healy. I was at numerous birthday parties in Tom Healy's house when I was young. Tom was the glass factory man at the time, and a few of them I would have known.
So obviously when your parents got the house out in St. John's Park, they were delighted.
Oh, I tell you, I'd say Buckingham Palace we thought it was. We really did now.
Okay.
You know, we had 3 bedrooms, the sitting room, the kitchen, bathroom downstairs, a bath, running water, a toilet for ourselves. Absolutely fantastic. You know.
I mean, to go from one to the other must be amazing.
Yeah, for loads of families, you know. It was fantastic, yeah. I remember running around the house like a mad woman, a little thing, and running around the house like a mad woman. I thought it was fantastic, yeah.
And the house that you moved into at that stage, was that the house, did you stay in that house or did you move to another house?
No, when we moved in we were number 9.
Okay.
And they had built other houses, but they hadn't been given out, they hadn't been numbered. There was a good few, we were number 9. Okay. And they were still building other houses around, and we stayed in that house, we never moved. But it did become 157. 151, sorry, I'm living in.
You live in 157. They changed it.
Yeah, when they built other houses, then they gave number 1 to somewhere else, and they gave us 151. So they were in that. My mother died 10 years ago. Her grandson is still in it, because she reared him.
And then at that time when you moved out here, you said there was very few other people around at that stage, was there?
Very few other houses. Now, they were building houses. I think they were building down the road from us. I know the ones up the road, you know, there was our block, and then there was the next block. But being all new to us, we were outside the gate or in the garden. You weren't left go too far away. But yeah, they were building away on the houses, you know, down below us, behind us, and above us. So there was a lot of building work going on. Yeah.
You didn't miss town then after you? I mean, you know what I mean? It wasn't kind of a case of like you were kind of going, oh, we're out the country now, or.
No, town. I suppose I was about 6.5. I suppose. I'd say town to me wasn't really town. We were never brought around the town. You know, I went to the sister school, which is now St. Joseph's Special School, and I went down there. And actually, the girl next door, who eventually came to live next door to us, she actually went there. She would have been a couple of years younger than me, but when I was in probably first babies or first standard or something, she was in the new, you know, the babies. But Town didn't, no, because which was only a little place where we were, and that was where we were, you know. We didn't go to town, we didn't go around the town. I don't remember anything in the town. You know, I do remember the Savoy Cinema, and they left us in there, maybe on a Sunday. And there was a little woman, I think of her name now. I think she was a Mrs. White, but I don't think she was anything to Val White, but she used to have a shawl. The shawls, most of the women wore shawls in those days. And she'd win the pictures on a Sunday, and we'd be allowed in, and John Wayne, you know, I'd be coming over the mountain, and she'd be shouting, "You're blind! Look at him, he's behind you!" And we used to have some laugh. That's all we used to go in for, you know.
Because they'd be shouting at the screen.
Yeah, and if there was a fella kissing a one, that was the end of it altogether. Did they ever go to confession? You know, so these kind of things, I remember these, you know. So, yeah, I remember that. But town now, we didn't really go around the town. I don't remember anything of the town. You know, I say it was about 8 or 9 before. I think my mother used to go in every Saturday on the bus to meet her mother, who came in from by Jack Meads there, she lived. And when my mother should be either having one of the children or whatever, I'd be sent in to meet her off the bus and help her with the
just
groceries.
to stay with you for a second before we move on to your two sisters. You said your mother was from out by Jack Meads. So what was her name? What was her family?
My mother's name, I'll tell you now, my mother was grandmother married Flynn. Grandmother was a Hennebree from Steve Rowe, and she married Flynn from Waterford.
Twyker Avenue, wasn't it? Maybe?
No. Carrigan Lane.
All right.
Flynn's at Carrigan Lane. And she married one of them. And they lived on the Cork Road on a little house down below the yellow house.
This is connected to Ben Sanders and all them, was it?
Who?
Ben Sanders and all that guy.
We wouldn't be they wouldn't be related to him, but they knew of them.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think one of them, what's their names now? It will come to me in a minute.
Okay.
I get a bit confused sometimes. But my grandmother married a Flynn, and they lived on the Cork Road, and then they moved to Twyker Avenue. And my mother's father died when my mother was about 9, and my aunt was probably about 12 or 13, was she? Around that. So my grandmother married again a man by the name of Thomas Hardy, who owned the cottage, and they went out there to live. It's, you know, where you go under the bridge to Jack Meads?
Yeah.
Well, if you go over the bridge, it's the 4th cottage up.
Oh, okay. It's unusual name, Hardy, isn't it?
Hardy, Hardy, Hardy. He was a real IRA man. Yes, old IRA man. That's what he was, a real old IRA man. Yeah.
I remember.
I was going to ask you, what did those people work at? Your two.
The first grandfather, as we'll call him, they had a shop on the Cork Road, but I'd say he lived in the pubs more than the shop, because he was a real drinker. He was a heavy drinker, and she used to get the groceries on a Friday in Mary's. Mary's was a shop on the Mall around by where the Reginald is now. And the story goes that she couldn't go to town one day from the Cork Road. He had an old lesson cart or something. She said to him, "Here, go in and pay. You'll pay Mary's for me and get this list of stuff," you know, and they should pay him the next week. So anyway, the ass brought him home at some stage, and then following that night or something, and did you pay? Mary will be married all his life, he said. Teddy'll only be married for one day. That's the story. I don't know whether these are true or not, but this is all what I know.
And then the other fellow, what did he work at?
Thomas Hardy was a gardener in St. Otterns all his life.
St. Otterns, oh,
St. Otterns. He was a gardener in St. Otterns all his life, yeah.
Yeah, he was. I remember that. I remember him being the gardener.
Yeah, and they lived about a half acre, I'd say, with the cottage. And he had everything and anything grown out. We used to eat the berries. We never thought of washing them or anything like that, but I did get a little insect stuck in my throat one day in a raspberry, so it put me off raspberries for life. I still wouldn't touch one to this day.
So we have got an idea of the family background, right? And you said the Winters name you think comes from, you're not sure where it comes from.
I know, and I have it in the book, and I should have looked at it.
Not really. Welsh, I thought.
But I think there's a lot of
debates on whether it was American, whether they came in from America, or whether it was actually Welsh.
Okay. Yeah, according to the book, some of them were in Portland, Darlingham. I think there's a bit of a gap, and
we were told too that originally it was winter.
Winter.
and the S
yeah.
was just added on as the
years,
years went
yeah.
by. But we were always known as Winters.
Winters. We were never known as that, and it's only Winters. People would say, "Oh, it's a Winter's Day today."
I'd say you're sick of hearing these jokes.
And the students
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and then you're the next oldest in this group here.
In this group
this
here,
group,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
In this group
yeah.
here.
So
yeah.
you were born in St. John's Park.
And I still live in St. John's Park.
Okay.
I'm living here. When I got married first, I moved to Dial Street, and we lived there for 4 years, and then we moved back out. That was 1978, and we moved back in 82. So we live up further up the road now from where I was reared. Yeah, I live up by where Hayes.
So what's your memory of growing up in out here?
Oh, just playing on the road with the other kids and playing old style games like beddies and there used to be a big wooden electricity pole over where the bus stop is now.
Yeah.
And we used to tie ropes on it and tie it around your waist and swing around, and that was also the bus stop, as it still is to this day. And you'd be just after coming in off the road and landing on the pattern, a double-decker bus would come up and miss you by about that much.
Yeah, we weren't killed and never know.
And hell, we weren't killed is a miracle, because if you'd have to have somebody, one of the children would have to be watching the rope to make sure that it wasn't wearing, and if somebody wasn't watching it and you swung around, the rope could just collapse and you might end up in somebody's garden. Now at the time there used to be grass there, it's all tarmac now, but at the time there used to be grass there. You'd end up on your bottom on the grass with the burn marks from the grass if you skid along it at the falling off. But just childhood memories like that.
And I mean, there was loads of kids.
Oh, there was loads of kids around when we were growing up. Sure, I mean, on our road alone, sure. I mean, I think
everyone had 8
the
or 10.
Reeds
Big
had
families,
9 or
like.
10. The Ryans had, I think, Mrs. Ryan
13, I
had, there's
think.
13 or something. In
And
that
she
family.
wasn't there at that time now.
Well, I remember from when the Ryans were there. Now, I think
Yeah,
there was shines in that house. Where they are?
No, Mrs. Long was there, Pearl
Mrs.
and
Long,
Jerry. Yeah, Pearl and Jerry.
I remember
Long,
all the
them
Ryans
now.
being there now. And, you know, we'd all play out together on the street, like, all the time, you know, so just going off having fun with them, going off up the fields, and you were never told. You knew when it started to get dark in the summertime, it was time to go home. You know, you had no mobile phones or anything for anybody to call you. You went off with your little packed lunch of jam and bread and your bottle of, what was it the mother used to call it? Jack Foran, she used to call it.
Jack Foran.
She used to call it Jack Foran. It was Jack Foran. She used to say, go off now with your bottle of Jack Foran and your jam sandwiches, and we used to go off up and have picnics up the field and all that. And we spent a lot of time actually annoying Catherine's mum and dad, because there was an arch at the side of their house. And we used to play 2 balls in the arch on the side of their house.
And speaking of 2 balls, do you remember any of the rhymes?
Oh, God. I can't really. Something, Mrs. Brown, was there?
Our Catherine.
Queenie,
Catherine was here
Queenie,
now.
who has the ball?
Oh, yeah, that was
Go
the
on
other
then.
one. Throw the ball
Is
behind.
Yeah.
she
Remember
big or
them,
is
yeah.
she small?
Yeah.
Something
I can't
like
remember
that. We were playing Mrs. Brown, all right, but I can't.
There was a load
Yeah,
of them.
stop
there
the
was,
buses.
Oh, what about skipping rhymes? Remember?
Oh, we
yeah,
used to play
there was loads of
skipping
them. I
as
don't
well.
remember the
Jeez,
rhymes.
I
I
don't
do
know.
remember falling over the rope one time. They used to do what they call going in over the moon. You'd go over the rope as it was going the opposite way.
Yeah.
And I fell and I sprained both ankles at the same time. I was laid up for 4 weeks or something. I couldn't walk. But I can't remember any of the rhymes.
Okay, and did you, and I'll bring you in on this as well, did you go to the Ursline?
Yeah.
Yes, we all went to the Ursula.
Did
Yeah.
you stay in
Oh
school
God, no,
until-
I went to the Ursula.
You went to the
When we
Ursline?
came out here, we
When
went to
moved
the
from
Ursula.
Louth, we
Yeah,
went out,
yeah.
Because wasn't there a funny thing about the Ursline that they had different, there was kind of private school.
There
within-
was a boarding school.
There was a boarding
The
school.
boarding school.
One was St.
There was
Ursula's, and I think
definitely
the
a
other
class
one was
distinction.
the other one was St.
Oh,
Andrew.
tell us
wasn't
what.
there
There was
something
definitely a class distinction in the Ursline for
Oh,
me
there
anyway.
Would you,
Oh,
get,
Definitely.
would you get a sense of that?
Oh,
all
yes.
the time,
Oh, total
definitely,
class
you know.
distinction.
Oh, you would
Yeah.
see it all the time. You'd see it in the classroom, you'd see it. Of course, when you come, like I'm the youngest of 10.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're coming to school, you might not have your knitting or your sewing or whatever. The money might not have been there to buy it at the time, but
Yeah.
the people with the money always had it, so they were never in trouble. So it could have been just me seeing it in a different light, but I always
that's
thought
the
there
way
was
it
class
was,
distinction
yeah.
definitely in the school.
There was a class
You know.
distinction in that school up to the time my daughter
Yeah.
went there, but the story is too long to tell now.
But I mean, okay, we're talking about history, right?
Mm.
But you would definitely feel that was definitely there for girls.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
If your dad was an ordinary, our dad worked in a mill. He worked in the old flour mills, Flake Mills, as the part he worked in was
yeah.
called. And you know, if your dad was a doctor or a solicitor or
It was a different
whatever,
situation, yeah.
they were treated better than the children whose dad was a man working in a mill or a factory or in a shop or whatever. That's the way I remember it.
Oh, it
anyway.
is, yeah. I remember
Me
it
too.
myself. My mother
mean,
had
there
murder a
was-
few times over
But
that.
Mary, you
area.
probably remember there wasn't there 3 different colour uniforms at one point.
Yeah, we
When it
had.
started off first, there was different colour uniforms.
Yeah, we had. From if I remember now, I think it was kind of royal blue, sort of a gym slip thing.
Yes, that's right.
And
Mary,
blue
yeah.
and white, but the other part of it, they had red. I don't remember a third
probably the
one, but I
boarding
do
school.
remember the red one. Yeah, I do remember that. They were the posh school and we were the poorer school, but a few, I suppose, better off than us were at the school as well, went to our school as well.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people from the Good Shepherd Convent, a good few girls. One of them actually, I meet her quite a lot. And I sat next to her in a couple of classes, but they were treated very badly, I thought.
So these were young people that were from an orphanage.
Yeah,
Yes,
from an orphanage.
yeah.
I thought they were treated very badly now.
And why would they come all the way out there? From
They went to, there was a good few, apparently there was a lot of them in there, and they went to different schools, you know.
Okay.
They were, a
So
few
they
of
went to
them
different
went
schools around Waterford.
around Waterford. Yeah, yeah.
There
they
was
went to
one girl
different
actually
schools.
from the Good Shepherd Convent that I remember that actually ended up working in the Ursula.
Yeah,
She used to do the cleaning and that there.
yeah.
She was there all her life.
Okay.
Yeah, she went to school there and she never kind of left. She stayed on, working
Yeah,
there after
yeah.
school and that. Yeah.
Right. But everybody would know that these were people from the orphanage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you would be told, yeah.
Okay. And then you said you became friends with one of the girls.
Yeah, one of the girls, actually I became friends with 2 of them, and one of them wouldn't have been overly bright. She was a lovely poor girl, but she's just, some children are brighter than others. The other wasn't too bad, but she used to get murdered. She used to get murdered now, if she couldn't spell something, Which, if they're bold, right, in those days, well and good, you got a slap. But I couldn't see why they should hit him, because they didn't. They couldn't
And
spell.
so the nuns used to slap as well as.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it wasn't just the Christian brothers.
Oh no, the nuns
God,
used to
no,
slap.
the
The
nuns-
nuns, some of them could be quite vicious.
And the lay
yeah.
teachers used to slap as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
There was one particular teacher, she had a cane, I remember as well. She had a ledge up over the blackboard and she used to keep this cane up on it. I often got a
Yeah.
whack off it myself when you couldn't spell something right.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays they know about things like dyslexia and that kind of thing, But in them days you were just classed as being stupid.
Yeah.
If you were left-handed, they would
Yeah.
tie your hand behind your back and try and make you write with your right hand.
Yeah.
They,
Like I do
maybe they
when-
didn't know any better, I don't know. But
I do maths and English on Tuesday morning at the school in the first standard class. Board games to teach, this is the way they teach them now, board games and things. And I am totally amazed at the way they're taught nowadays. Now, the teachers will still leave a roar at them, but there's no such thing as hitting them. If they don't know, like I'd be out there, say from 9 or 9:30, maybe 9:45, and the other teacher comes in, and the spare teacher, he comes in then and he takes off a lot of them that need the extra help, and he'll take them off with him
There's
then.
never that
And,
in the old days. Like,
it's not like that in the old days. So there's no child left behind. There's no child left behind now, which is only right. It's only right that, a lot of them have the same abilities. They just they're not as quick at learning maybe as us, but they have different abilities and different things.
And speaking of the, I suppose people that are a bit different, like St. John's Park is right next to St. Otterham's. What was the relationship between the local kids and the hospital, the patients and all that? Were you
We grew up
scared?
in Rob the
kind of
apples
knew
off
all
the
the
trees.
time, didn't we?
I knew a lot of the
We worked
patients.
in the shop up in Grange,
Yeah.
Grange Lawn. Bridie was the first to work there, weren't
Worked up there in
and
used to be
we
a
used to
Spar.
walk through St. Otterham's, so and they used to come in and out, and you'd get to know them, and you'd know
Yeah, it's grand, like.
normal everyday people.
We
doing it,
actually had
you
a
know.
cousin up there, my mother's cousin. She was from Slieve Rue, and when she was 15 or 16, she was very wild, rather after young fellas. Didn't we all? But in those days, it wasn't the done thing. And she was very wild, and the priest recommended she be put into the mental.
As it
So
was
she was
known.
put into the mental. And when she was about 55, 65, they put her into a little house in Cannon Street. Her 2 brothers came home from England. These would have been my grandmother's brothers, and one of them owned it, or it was his daughter, Jack's daughter. and her father and her uncle came home from England, and she went into a little house in Cannon Street with them and couldn't live there. You know, I worked in Brook House on the Cork Road for a while, and I just an outpatient department for Otterms, and I was asking one of the nurses one day, did she know her? She said she did, but she couldn't cope, she said, when they put her out into the house. No, I said, I remember going up to see her with my mother up there, and she said, what was she put in there for? I said, no, I know, it was for nothing, like, for nothing. I know, she said, there's loads of people in there, she said.
Yeah, I knew a man. Remember Morris?
Yeah.
Morris used to come into the shop, and even when I left up there, and then I worked in O'Regan's down the road there for 12 years as well, and I used to still meet Morris in odd time, and he used to say to me, I don't know why, I used to say to people, Morris is just a normal man, there's nothing wrong with Morris. He didn't seem to have any kind of mental illness,
People
Kind
were
of
frightened, I
slow,
suppose.
And he
that
said
kind of
that,
man, you know.
They told me when I asked why I was living in here that I was born on the wrong side of the sheets. And that was the answer they gave the man. He was in there from the time he was about 5. I think he's died in the last few years. I'm not sure.
So he was an illegitimate child.
He was an
Yeah.
illegitimate
Yeah.
child, and it was put in there when he was young. Terrible what they done to people. Like.
Well, things like that were done. I remember, yesterday I was out at a fun day up in Ballybeg, and there was loads of, they brought out the Down syndrome children, and they had, with a dance, tea dance type of thing out there. Great sport out there. And I just said to one of my friends sitting there, I said, you imagine, I said, a few years back, they locked them up.
Yeah, when you think
They were a
about it,
curse
yeah.
from God. That's what you were told, they were a curse from God. Something you sinned, something you did in your life, and they were a curse from God.
And people were very superstitious, weren't they? Going way back. Like.
They were very superstitious, very religious. I suppose religion was bet into them, like, I mean, literally bet into them. I remember my mother-in-law telling me they lived down Woodstown, and a new family moved in over the road, but they were English and they were Protestants. And her and the girl in the house were more or less the same age, so they got friendly. And no, it wasn't allowed. No, absolutely, bow your head passing her, turn your head, don't speak to her. She's a Protestant, I mean.
And
Well,
he
well,
was going to
unfortunately-
marry a Protestant in a couple of weeks, in 7 weeks' time.
Yeah, this is
Well, it's
it.
very different now, obviously.
Obviously,
It's
it's so
just
different.
interesting to hear those old stories, though.
Yeah.
And do you remember any kind of old fish oaks and all these kind of things where people had, things like, the way people used, even with religion, they used to hang out things like certain.
Oh yeah, there used to be always, there was always things like that. I can't remember half of them now.
What was the thing with the infant,
the parade
the
thing
pram or whatever you call it, that they used to put out the window when you were getting married?
We're not very
Was it?
religious, as you
We're
can
not religious
tell.
at all. I'm not, anyway.
Put something out the window when you were getting
Yeah,
married.
remember that little statue? They put it in the window,
Yeah,
so
you
you'd
put
have
the
good
statue
weather or
in
something on your
and then-
wedding day, was it?
Oh no, I thought
I
you
don't
were
know.
talking
I
about
know I
Well,
got,
now
I
one of
got
them for you
a
when you were
present
getting
of
married.
an infant of
Yeah, what was
Prague
it?
or Prague,
Yeah,
whatever they call it
yeah,
now.
yeah.
And I got, someone gave me that on my wedding day, and I got a picture of that. I'm not anyway religious
not
now
religious
at
at
all, I was turned off religion when I was about probably 10 or 12, maybe 10, 11 or 12. I used to pal with a girl up the road, and really we didn't know anything about other religions as such. We didn't know, we knew there was Protestants and Catholics, but anything else we weren't really up on. And she told me that her mum and dad and all the family had become Jehovah's Witnesses. I had to know what it was, but she explained it was another religion. And she was in my class going to school as well. And I remember a day or two later, we used to always have religion at 12 o'clock. And a particular nun came in for the religion, and she said, would the pagan in the class please leave? And the poor young one got up and walked out.
Jeez, imagine that.
Now, her father had a big motorbike. Huge, probably something similar to a Harley Davidson. I couldn't tell you the name of it, but a big motorbike. And he used to bring us in turns up and down to school, because we used to go to school 9:30 until 12:30, and back at 1:30 until 3:30. And he'd give us a lift up and down. And I used to get a spin on it, and a couple of my brothers, there was a brother, one of them used to pal, I think, with Teddy. And no bother, cheers. We were down in Mass on a Sunday. And the priest started talking about the family who left, because they went to England shortly after now. They couldn't stay here like that. And there was people going on their motorbike, children. and he was denouncing him off the altar. So I was denounced off the altar.
Good
Written up
job
on
of
the
it.
multiple.
I didn't even know he was talking about me until my father told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Like, you know the way, you can't, it's so stupid, like, really.
But you saw it as stupid, didn't you, at that time?
I'd say I felt, I think I questioned,
Yeah.
I started to question.
Yeah.
But you see, you couldn't question the nuns, and you definitely couldn't question the priests, and you couldn't question your father either about it. I remember asking my mother was a very forward-looking woman, and I said to her, like, why, she's no different, she's still Kathleen, like, she's no different. And she said, well, that's the way it is, like, that's the religion, Catholics run the country, and that's the way, you know, you have to conform to it. She said, it's not right, and I hate religion, but she said, that's the way it is. And while she was never religious, you wouldn't go against it at the same time. You'd be terrified. You'd be saying, there's no God, but at the same time you'd be saying, I wonder, is there? Could I be struck down on the last day? I don't care when I'll be dead, so it won't make any odds with it. But in those days, I thought we were going to heaven or hell, you know. And the people believed it, like, and still believe it, like. But fair play to anyone have those beliefs, you know.
So Eleanor, you were the youngest, and were you spoiled rotten?
Well, I didn't think I
yes.
was, but I was.
Yes.
Yes, she was.
Yes.
Her
Yes.
dad
Yes.
delivered her.
I
He was the
wasn't
only one of
that
us that
What?
her dad more or less delivered her, because when my mother went into labour and the midwife was called, we were all from Catherine down, wasn't it? Was born in the house across the road, number
Yeah.
151.
Born at
And
home.
when the midwife was called, when my mother went into labour on Eleanor, she said, oh, she'll be fine, she'll be ours yet. And by the time my father came back from the phone box used to be over in the square at the time, just off the square, and my father went around to phone her, because we obviously no phones in the house or anything then. And by the time he came back around, Eleanor was on her way, so he had to help her into the world. And from that day, I think it was because, and she was the last.
I think I softened him for this.
Because we think that softened him a little bit, because he saw like the baby being born, and we always
He would
said
never have
if it
seen
had to be Mary, because Mary was the eldest, none of the rest of us would have been born. But we got Eleanor was the last one then.
That's the last one
So
then.
you were the
Yeah.
contraceptive of the family.
Yes, definitely. Took him a while to cop on after 9 others, but there you go.
And so you had loads of mammies then?
Oh, I had loads of mammies.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't remember Mary living at home. You know, I
She
always
was
go to Mary's
only-
to
I was
stay
married
for the
at
weekend or
kind
whatever.
of
You know, she was
19.
like another mother.
Yeah. I was married
Yeah.
I was nearly 20. I was married in the August, I was 20 in November.
And that wasn't unusual, people
Oh
getting
no,
married.
jeez, no, my
I
mum
was
said
only
you want to
19
hurry on,
when I got
girl.
married as well.
You'll be on the shelf. You weren't married by the time you were 21, you were an old spinster, like. I was pregnant now, I had to get married, but that's beside the point.
Like
Well, we
after
had
one-
actually booked the wedding. He had asked me to marry him, and we booked the wedding for 29th or 27th of September or something that year. But then I discovered I'm pregnant, so we
So you
just
didn't
brought
know
it
your older
forward.
sister? Like in the house?
No, I don't ever remember Mary living at home, no.
Okay.
No.
So Mary's daughter's only 3 years younger than me, like her oldest daughter, so
Yeah.
I used to go out to Mary's for holidays at the weekends, torment her for a while.
Okay. And
So-
what was St. John's Park like at that stage?
Oh, it still isn't, like, as Bridie said, you could look out the sitting room window and the kids would be up and down the street. Like, there was always kids on the street and everyone kind of knew everyone. I suppose everyone's going to school together then as well. It's just natural that you end up hanging around together when you're out of school, you know. But I wouldn't have the memories Mary have, like
The
you know.
neighbours coming in and out.
The neighbours
now,
coming in now,
you
now
know,
and
you
that
remember
kind
the
of thing,
neighbours
you know,
coming in
always
and
say,
out.
I wouldn't have that where I am now, like, you know. I have neighbours that I get on with and I never fell out with, but it wouldn't be the same thing. They wouldn't walk in my door and fix my curtains or anything like that, you know, like the old neighbours did.
And do you think that was because of, I suppose, in the way everybody was on the same kind of poverty level?
Yeah.
Yes,
That's basically
exactly.
what it was, yeah. As we used to say now, when in my generation school used to say, we're the Johnnies, the Dunmore Road crowd at the other side, you know. That was the class distinction for us in the school, like, just
Okay.
depending on where you came from, so.
And, like, I don't know whether it was, say, at your time, Eleanor, or your time, Bridie, but St. John's Park did have a tough reputation.
Did now, I remember my sister
Yeah,
just,
I remember now
she
when
was
I
older,
started
yeah.
dating fellas first, I was kind
That
of
was
young, I
it.
was about 14, but anyway, if you met somebody, like my sisters used to sneak me out of the house, 2 older girls than me that are not here, and they'd take me in. I remember being in the Olympia Ballroom once before it closed down. I must have been only about 12, and then it opened up again as something else, which the name now fails me, but I used to go in there with them, and if you met a fella or anything, he would only walk you home as far as the Folly.
So, yeah.
Not when
come
you
up
were
into
12
John's
now, you were
Park.
older by then.
Well, about 14 I was then. Is he still up at the bar? He is. But no, fellas wouldn't come out into, they wouldn't come into John's Park. The Johnnies.
They need a passport.
There was
They
the
need a
Johnnies and the
passport to come
Lizzies
into
now.
John's
That's
Park,
what
yeah.
I kind of
And
would
the
remember
church
more.
wasn't
The
there.
the Johnnies and the Lizzies.
So they were.
John's Park
They
and
were the
Liz Duggan.
fighting thing, and we all married each other. Like at the end of the day, all the Johnnies married the Lizzies. But they'd be gang fights now, you know. But there'd be petrol bombs and everything now. They used to make them up. I was never part of it now, but my husband was. From the
I
Lizzies
never
side.
remember any of that, but I do remember a fella asking me
Definitely
home
now. They go
one
across the
night from
Black
the
Pipe.
Olympia. He said, "Where do you live?" I said, "In John's Park." "Oh, I'd have to bring my friend with me," he said. So his friend had to come with, so I came home with two fellas.
A chaperone.
Chaperone.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah. But they actually walked me now to just by O'Regan's there at the end of that
You
wall
used to,
there.
used to
yeah.
kind of end at the lane. They used
Yeah,
to be
the
crossing
lane,
the church.
yeah,
the boyfriends
yeah.
when you bring it to the lane, you have to walk up the rest of the way yourself. Like.
Yeah, and I say, "Stand there now, will you?" And we've run off up the road. But you could. I often walked home to the Olympia on
I
my own.
walked
Like.
home plenty
You
of
know,
time through
and-
John's Park.
Nobody would bother you.
Okay.
You know, now you wouldn't leave the child going next door. You'd be, you know,
You don't-
in case they'd be robbed on the way. But not anymore, you know, not those days.
And then obviously you were talking earlier on, but we might as well talk about it now with the cameras rolling, that the role of women changed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you were small, I mean, women did everything as regards the older sisters. They did everything for the men, the boys, and all that.
Yes.
So could you tell us some of those stories?
Well, I remember having the first, I think actually it was the first washing machine I ever remember in our house. And it had just the part where you washed, and then it had an old style wringer on it.
Yeah.
And I remember myself and my sister Catherine, we used to have to do the sheets. Why the sheets were our particular job, I don't know, but we used to have to wash the sheets. And Catherine would pull them out of the water and put them through the wringer. And you'd nearly go out the whole way out from the kitchen. I know the house wasn't very big now, but you'd end up at the end of the stairs trying to wring the water out of things. We were all allocated household duties to do, particularly the girls. The boys might have been, you know, you go out and you bring in a bucket of coal kind of thing.
But that's kind of when you asked me earlier, was I spoiled? And that way I was spoiled. Because like I said, you did more than I did at home. I mean, I got my nickname from being cleaning, but you know, we used to have to clean the boys' bedroom and all that. But as I got older, I started charging him, as I said, and now I have a house husband, so it worked. It definitely turned me the other way. And I have a son, and I won't lift a finger for him. He's got to do
I
it
mean,
himself.
obviously it's completely changed.
It has
but
to. It
It's
had
really
to.
interesting for people to hear what it was like, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way
Yeah.
back, you know what I mean?
Well, my
Like,
father said he used to take my mother out twice a year. The race is on the 15th of August in Tramore, and up to his mother's house in Dominic's place, that's where he was from, then she lived at that stage, up there on Stephen's night for a party.
That was her.
And that was her
That was
twice
her
a
excitement
year.
for the year.
Now, she used to go to the pictures in to see Rock Hudson. She loved Rock Hudson. And she wrote it to was it his or Robert Mitchum's fan club, one of their fan clubs anyway. She saw it in a magazine or something. And she said to me, "Father, because the post box was down the road a bit, would you post that on the way down, Sam?" "I will, girl." So when he went to put it in, he realised what it was, and he back up his bike and up the road. "What are you writing to paper men for? They're only paper men." And when he found out Rock Hudson was gay, that was the end of all. But she used to love Rock Hudson, and she reckoned every time she went, she got pregnant. So we don't know whether Rock Hudson knows half us or what, but anyway.
Every time she went to the cinema,
Every went to cinema to see Rock Hudson.
she
Not
went
anyone else, only Rock Hudson. She always
the
got
husband
pregnant.
did well when she came home.
Very well, very well, yes. So she always reckoned that, yeah. She always got pregnant after Rock Hudson.
But it's really funny because I mean, was it Robert Mitchum was a bit more he was a bit more earthy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Yeah,
But Rock
definitely.
Hudson was good looking. He was
was.
handsome.
He
I
was
even
the
liked
polished
him
one.
myself.
We should have
in
known
his
he
day.
was gay then. He was
Yeah,
so
we should have.
polished. He was perfect. But he was just that Hollywood
Yeah.
look about him.
Yeah,
Used to
he-
love-
I knew another woman who was mad about Robert Mitchum. She was mad about him. and She just,
Robert
Yeah.
Mitchum was, I always liked Robert Mitchum in films. He just had that
Bit of
Like,
rough.
Swagger.
the swagger,
Swagger.
something about him. Yeah. Tom Cruise is my man now.
Oh, God.
I love Tom Cruise. He's just my size and all. A little bundle. They had to stand him on a box for the bigger women, didn't they?
She didn't want to come out here and now she has to stop talking. It's like a therapy session.
We'll have to watch you after you go to see Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah. I think
Gotta be
no,
careful.
I have 4 children. I could have named 3 of them parents. But other than that, that was it. No,
Rock Hudson involved there.
Poor Tom Cruise. Yeah, I love Tom Cruise. Yeah.
Okay, and so when you were growing up, Mary, because where would you go for the crack? Would you go into the cinema, or where would you go?
Oh, we walked the town.
Okay.
You know, money was. The cinema, it might have been, I remember it being 4p. I can't remember whether that was when I was down in Jenkins Lane or whether it was when I was in Johns Park, but I remember it being 4p, you know, in the old money. But no, we'd go around the town.
Walking around.
Walk around the town and you know.
Tramore was our place. We especially in the
Well, we
summer.
never had the money to go to Tramore. I remember I was going out with a chap one time. He lives in in Johns Park now, but I won't embarrass him. He's not here now, but I won't embarrass him. But he had a Honda 50, and he was the grandest. He still is the grandest lad ever. And the bus strike was on for 10 weeks. So I was the only one in Johns Park was in Tramore every day. We used to go out on the back of the Honda 50. Because there was nobody else, there was no buses. There were 10 weeks strike the whole summer. And I used to be out. We nearly had Tramore to ourselves, but very few people had cars in those days, you know. The only one I remember having a car on our block now when we were young, real young, was Mrs. Teeby. She lived 2 doors down from us. And she'd bring
Peg TV.
Peg's
Peg's
sister-in-law.
sister-in-law.
Yeah, her husband,
Yeah.
two husbands were brothers. And Mrs. Teeby and Billy Teeby, he'd put us into everyone. He could have 10 or 12 in the back of the car.
Yeah.
And he'd bring us all out to the back strand. And they had a Primus stove and a huge big kettle. And she'd have 3 or 4 bracks, all buttered, cut up and buttered. And we'd play out there for hours on end. No such thing as cream for our bodies. We got roasted, but nobody cared. And it was fantastic. I remember it so well. It was one of the best times of my life was that, always going off with them in
She
the back of
actually
the car.
saved our mother's life, Mrs. Teeby. Now that story
She
is coming
did,
back to me.
yeah.
I remember I was sitting in the kitchen one day in the old, you know the old Super Serre gas fires. My
Fire,
mother
yeah.
had one of them, and she had an ulcer on a vein on her leg here, and whatever way she moved, she caught it on the corner of the Super Serre, and she started to bleed. I was about 13, I'd say maybe 13 at the time, 12 or 13 at the time. I didn't know what to do. The blood was just everywhere. And we happened to claim, we dragged her up and we got her up to bed, and someone ran for Mrs. Condon, who lived next door to us, and she wasn't there, so they went down for Mrs. Teeby. And Mrs. Teeby came up and she knew straight away what to do. She put her leg up in the air, she bandaged it all up and held it with towels and everything. Only for her, my mother would have bled to death that day. But we were only kids, we hadn't a clue. I remember my brother Sammy running. He actually jumped over the wall at the house to come over here because there was a phone box in the little off lessons here at the time. And he ran over here to phone for an ambulance. And she was in hospital for about 3 weeks. She lost an enormous amount of blood. But I actually remember sweeping that blood, clots in it, that size, out the back door of our house.
I don't know that bit.
But Mrs. Teeby saved her life, yeah, she did.
Oh, she saved her life, yeah.
She
Our
did.
mother was a big woman and Miss Teeby was a tiny
Miss Teeby was a
small
great
woman.
homemaker. She was a great
tiny,
homemaker.
small.
She, you know, she could bake, she could knit, she could do everything. And my
her
mother
daughter
knitted,
is
of course.
the
My
same.
mother baked as well, but Miss
she
Teeby always.
did,
But I
yeah.
thought she was much better than my mother because she baked bracks and things like that that my mother didn't, you know. And they were lovely. My mother, they made everything. I remember now, my father worked over in Flake Maze, which was a branch of the flour mills. And they used to get, he worked in, they made the pig meal. And the residue off of this was, the taste was yellow, the yellow meal. And it tasted like semolina. Have you ever eaten semolina? Well, that's what it was like, semolina. Only that was very yellow. And we used to have pots of that, breakfast in the morning, supper at night. And then he'd bring home the flour bags. And they'd boil them and boil them. My mother gave them to loads of people on the street, and they'd boil them. And they'd get really white then, you know, because they were kind of, I don't know, an off-white beigey colour. And they'd boil them until they were white, and then they'd make sheets out of them, and pillowcases and night dresses and anything else that needed to be made out of them. Some people had them up on the windows for curtains, and they made them, you know.
Well, it was
A lot of it was make do.
yeah, people were very clever,
Yeah.
weren't they? As you
I
guys?
remember one particular woman who had a load of children, but she had a girl for communion. She had a good few girls, and she had a girl for communion, and no money to buy a communion dress or anything, and you know, and she had net curtains somebody had given her, so she made a communion dress out of the net curtains,
It's amazing.
and it was beautiful, gorgeous, you know.
That's the deal.
And when I made my communion dress came from England. And my cousin in England, who she's dead now, she was the same age as me, 3 months older than me. And she made her communion on the Sunday, so it had to go in the post on the Monday. So if the post had been delayed, I would have made my communion on the Thursday. If I did, I would have been made with my school uniform, I'd say. But everything came. I remember getting new underwear and new shoes, but other than that, everything else came from England.
My mother had a sister in England.
Yeah.
She only had 2 children and they were a little bit more better
Better
off
off
than
than we were.
us. So we kind of got their hand-me-downs.
And the
They
thing
used to come
about
over
this
to
was a
us.
long dress, and I thought it was horrible. And I cried, and I'm in the front of the photograph. And Tommy Hennessy, the undertaker, his mother, gave me a perm. And God help me, I had very bad hair. I had alopecia. And I had very bad hair, and she gave me a perm. And if you see the state of me, oh my God. When I
More
look at
worse
it, I
than
said,
anyone else.
surely to God, I'm not like... but yeah, that was me in the front of the photograph with a long dress. Beautiful dress, but I thought it was horrible.
And
That's because you were a child.
sorry, and just in relation to your first jobs, what was you said you were working in the shop.
Yeah, well, your first job would have been Betty
My
Connolly's,
first job
which
was
is up
working in
Grange Lawn.
Spar. A woman by
Yeah.
the name of Betty Connolly had pub. They had the shop up there. They used to have the old stand pub years ago, and I remember I started up there when that was 1974. I started in the October, so I was just gone 15 when I started up there, and I was there for 4 years until 78, and then I got married. At that stage, it was actually still legal for your employer to leave you go if you were getting married. They didn't have to keep you on. But she would have kept me on, but we were at the buying a little house up in Dial Street and it was too far. I didn't drive. I still don't drive. I didn't drive, and I actually left the job, and then we were up in Dial Street for 4 years. I came back out to Johns Park, and I went back up there and I worked there again for about another year or a year and a half when we moved back out to Johns Park. And then after, sorry.
Jo came in then, she worked there.
the
and
next,
then
our
the
next sister,
down
the next
Trees.
sister then down below
Josephine,
me, Josephine, she started working there. Then another girl, Teresa, who was supposed to be here today and hasn't turned up, she worked there. Then Eleanor came along,
started there
she
when I was
worked there,
12.
and Mary's daughter, Sandra, who's 3
She
years.
worked there for a little
no,
bit
It's
as
a
well.
family
she worked
tradition.
there. So we all ended up
And then when
working
they
for
sold
Betty
the shop,
Connolly,
I went back and worked for the Sheridans and they bought it, so it was like drawing me back all the time. So.
Yeah.
And
So
then
it's
I
good,
worked
yeah. We all
in
worked there at some
Morris Hayes' shop then in the late 80s, actually the early 80s, I'm telling you, the early 80s, for about 2 years. Tom was unemployed at the time, and I lived directly opposite the shop. And I worked up there for a couple of years. And then Eleanor was working in O'Regan's, as it was
Just
then.
below us there, I think.
And John O'Regan said a girl was going out on maternity leave and he needed someone for about 6 or 8 weeks. And did she know anyone? And she said, well, my sister Bridie might do it if it's only for that length of time. And I went in there for 6 weeks and I came out of it 12 years later. I stayed there for 12 years. So
Shops is a big thing in the family.
Shops was
Was
myself
there, yeah.
and Teresa and you, wasn't it? And
See,
Josephine.
when
I
big
worked in-
families-
girls
I
worked
worked in
factories.
It's like the
Dawson's
big
on the
families all
quay.
grow up together. You know, it's like you hang around with your sisters. You know what I mean? When you have
Yeah.
6 sisters, like 7 girls in your family. So we all kind of followed through on all the jobs. You know, the 4 of us, like you said, worked in one shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But that's just the way it went. Someone who you know is how you got a job in them days as well. You know.
I remember
So-
it was Mrs. Power, Oily Power, came down to my mother's, and the girl living a couple of doors off from her was working up in Betty Connolly's at the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And she knocked at the door and she knew I was unhappy in school. I was always unhappy in school. And she knocked on the door and she said, would you leave Bridie to start work? She said, I know a girl her boss is looking for someone. And that was how I got the job up in Betty Connolly's.
And then when I was 15 and was schooling to Angela going down the road got me a job in Arkin Stores. So, you know, just the neighbours again, you know.
That's
who
the way
you know,
it
like who
was,
knew
yeah.
someone and that's
That's the way it was then, yeah.
Yeah, just the woman next door, Mrs. Condon, came in one day and where she used to get her papers was Dawson's on the quay. It is occasions now. And in there they were looking for someone to do summer work, so I went in there when I was 14. So
Whereas now you have to.
That's your first job.
that was my first
That's your
job,
first
and then
job,
I was minding the children at home until I went into the jute factory the following June.
And what was the jute factory like? Because I mean, everyone knows where it is, and, you know, the big chimney and everything. But what was it like to work there?
Noisy, dusty, but I enjoyed every minute of it. It was brilliant, brilliant
There was loads
crowd.
of women, wasn't there?
Look, mostly women, yeah. A few men, but mostly women. We all worked on the looms, and you know. But there was the mill part as well, where they put all the coarse thread onto these spools, and they were brought in then and starched on the bank inside, and then they went up on the looms and they made sacks and backing for carpets and things like that.
And would you feel dirty when you come out of the place, or would you be?
You'd be dusty.
Dusty,
You wouldn't be
okay.
dirty, but you'd be dusty. And they brought in this green back in one time, so we were all green.
You all turned green.
We used to go down we'd finish work at 10 o'clock. We used to work 6 days, you see, in those times. And the Olympia on a Friday night, you finish work at 10 o'clock and into the bathroom up there, when I call it a bathroom, a couple of tiles and a sink, and you rub your face, a bit of makeup on, take off we used to wear overalls, and we'd have the clothes that we were going to the Olympia in under the overall. You take it off. The half at the end of it, we all green, but you went down to the Olympia anyway, you didn't care.
Straight down.
Straight down. Oh yeah, sure. If you went home, you might be left out again.
Yeah.
You know, so you ducked down to the Olympias. You know.
And speaking of going out, did you? We'll start with you first, Mary. What pubs would you have gone out to when you were like? Because I know women probably weren't encouraged to go to pubs.
No, we weren't encouraged to go to pubs. One chap that I went out with, and he brought me into what is now the Hope. It was.
Was it Tom Alans at the time?
Commodore.
It wasn't the Commodore, that's the one.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
trying to think, the Commodore, that's the one. And he brought me in there. That was well, I was in here once or twice, I presume, but mostly that was the first pub I was in. I was in there a couple of times, but we didn't go to pubs. We didn't have money to go to pubs.
Yes.
So I kind of really didn't go to pubs until I met my husband. So I was only 17 when I met him. And we used to come over here and quite a lot, you know.
That's the difference in generation then, because
Different generation.
I
We
was
sit
coming
here.
over here in a much earlier age.
10 o'clock on a Sunday
and I think
night
I was
was
the first,
closed.
one of the first women to drink in the pool room for myself and Teresa were the first women, and then you come out with Tom. Yeah,
Yeah, it was-
definitely.
it
We
was
were
much
probably
different.
the first women to drink.
was often in
there was
this-
always women's darts on a Tuesday night in the pool room, but every other time it was all men in there.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so
Teresa
Tuesday
started
night was like
drinking
women's night then?
was women's darts night
Women's
in Brady's.
darts
I
night,
think it
yeah.
still is, isn't it? I think it still is. And Seven Trees used to just come in, in with the men. I got me sitting in the lounge now. I always had better fun with the men. So
Well, I
that's
was
where we
never
went.
good at pool or anything
So
like that.
well, I
often
was
the
going
only
to
one.
pubs at an early age. She might have went till she was
And
married,
what
but I
pubs would you gone into town?
Oh, the Showboat definitely, because I went for the music. So it was always, I was 13 going to the Showboat because, like, same as herself, 2 older sisters got me in just to see a band, and that's how I had to go on
And on Wednesday night,
Wednesday night,
was the
rock night, yeah, the Bogey Boys, and you name it, I was there.
And I used to go to the partners on a Tuesday and Simon on a Thursday.
But by the time I was 15, I was
Simon
up there
on a
probably every
Thursday,
night
yeah.
and going to Breen's on Saturday night. You know, it was different, like, you know.
And Bridie, which pubs did you go to?
At the Showboat. We used to go to Showboat and then
Simon
went
on
to
the Thursday,
Katie
yeah.
Riley's or
For the rock music.
and O'Shea's, on a Saturday and Sunday night, like, yeah. That's what
We used to go to the Stronghold. That is now the Edge.
Oh yeah.
Ballad sessions, Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday, I think, or something. The ballad sessions were down there.
Okay.
We used to go down there then to the ballad sessions. Yeah, I used to love that. Now that was really nice, really old-fashioned at the time. The old-fashioned
And
place.
just to finish off, just talk about St John's Park. Just again looking back on it. I mean, what would you say? I mean, I know there's three different eras here, right? But we start with you, Mary. Just looking back on it now, what would you say is your strong memory of St John's Park, or feeling that you had
Well,
about it?
Everybody was very friendly. You were never without, if you were without something, you knocked next door, or they knocked at you, or somebody knocked along the door of the road, and someone had a couple of slices of bread, or a bit of butter, or a bit of
And you wouldn't be
sugar.
embarrassed at it.
Oh no, because everybody else, they knocked at our door as well, and if we had it, they got it, and things like that. If you run out of something now, you kind of have to go. No, I have to say I have great neighbours. But, in a lot of houses now, if you run out of something, you have to go to the shop, or if you haven't the money, you have to do without it. But in those days, it was shared. There was a lot of sharing went on.
Yeah, that would be a very strong memory.
Your door
for me
would
as
be
well,
open.
Yeah.
I don't know, our door was always open.
You go down to the end. I remember my mother going down to the end of the back garden, like with the neighbours behind us. And one of them might be
Yeah.
looking for something that she'd
Yeah.
have, and vice versa, and they'd be
Yeah.
swapping them over
Swapping
the hedge
over
at the
My
end of the
father,
garden.
he reared day-old chicks. And he used to, we had loads of eggs, and they gave them round to the neighbours. They didn't even charge the neighbours, just gave them round to the neighbours.
We had chickens in the back garden.
Chickens
for
in the
a
back
while,
I don't
garden.
remember
yeah.
that either.
I do, I vaguely remember.
I was
that
really
now,
the last.
Yeah, and it's like people shared. Some people grew potatoes, so everyone on the street had potatoes. There was always a few potatoes.
Yeah, and
There was
And
always
the-
the few.
and the lettuce.
The
and-
mackerel would always come in, and the cockles, in the
Yeah.
summer you'd
someone would go out and get them.
you'd send down
There
the
was always
cockles
the
and-
few that went up
It's
into
kind of
the...
the camaraderie of the whole thing. It's the way everyone was just in the same boat, basically, and no one had airs and graces. Someone
Yeah.
might have a much nicer house than you, but that was rare. It was rare that they'd
But
have.
you're not that kind of Irish thing where people kind of, who does she think she is, getting with notions about herself?
Well,
Was
you-
that there? Or, you know what I mean?
I wouldn't say
If someone tried to get on. in some
well,
way.
yeah, I would say that was there to a degree, but it wasn't.
I don't ever remember that now.
a little bit.
I
You
remember
get-
someone getting new net curtains on their window. And somebody said to my mother, who does she think she is? And my mother said, fair play to her. And as soon as I can afford them, I'll be getting them.
Okay.
You know, I think my mother was 25 years married before she got her first bit of carpet. And it was actually the older ones we saved up and bought it for.
Yeah.
Paddy and Anne, Catherine, Teddy, I suppose, whoever. And that was their first bit of carpet on the stairs and land, you know. And they had boards for us when we went out there. They had then what's his name? The cruelty man used to go around first. So I remember him distinctly. Be terrified of him. He was sent out by the council, I think, to make sure all the children were okay, that children were being treated properly. He could go into your house. You couldn't say no. And then there was a fella from the council who was sent out to check on all the houses. And he said to my mother, you're here so many years, well, maybe 3 or 4 years, and you've no wallpaper on the wall. Ah, geez, but she said you can't eat wallpaper. And that was the answer she gave him. But things like that, I remember them, that kind of thing, you know. And you'd be ducking the rent man when they wouldn't have the money. As the rent man wanted
You'd open the door and you'd say Christy Hennessy on the corner was the rent man.
For a
And you'd
while,
open the
yeah.
door and say, Mr. Hennessy, my mammy said to tell you she's not here today. You'd say, okay.
And then Bobby Cunningham was the rent man.
Bobby Cunningham, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, things like that. And my mother, anybody used to come into my mother now, she'd always have a joke for him and a cup of tea. The insurance man, he'd be here 3 hours, you know what I mean?
I remember one time.
Saturday morning was like a party
remember-
in your
I remember-
house with
I remember-
cups of tea and biscuits.
I remember one time Lions Tea ran a competition and they used to go around door to door.
Yeah, if you had
And
Lions
if you
tea in
had
your
Lions-
press
you had
or something,
a
wasn't
box
it?
of Lions Tea in your
Yeah.
house. And you had to say some sort of a slogan or something that they had, and she said and she won £25, which was a
yeah.
lot of money back in them days. Like I remember that now distinctly, like, and I
Yeah.
think everybody in John's Park got some of that £25. Like it was shared, you know.
Yeah, I remember an itinerant woman used to come around the doors, and my mother would give her a couple of pence, you know. And she came one day, and my mother said to her, she's all I have, girl. I think she used to give her 6pence, but all I have, she said, is a shilling for the gas. Give it to me, she said, and you'll have the best of luck today. So my mother gave it to her. And the Torch Club, which was kind of a little pools, was run up in the Mount Sion, I think it was. Paddy was going up there. But didn't Paddy win the Torch Club anyway? £40. He brought it home for me. He came home from school with the £40. And my mother gave him the shilling to the traveller woman, her last shilling. So she always said,
Well, the mother's saying always was, give it a kind heart and you
Give-
get back on the
yeah,
double.
yeah.
That was her.
Give it with kind heart.
Give with a kind heart and
And
you get back on the double. That was my mother saying. She used to always say that. But
So
one
she
of
gave
our
a shilling.
abiding memories, we have to tell you this story because my husband is going up there and he's indicating it to me for the last 10 minutes. I don't know whether you've heard the story or not, but it was in the Jim Nolan story that Jim wrote
yes, the
about,
famous story.
about our brother Sammy.
Yes.
You've heard this story,
Yes,
have you, about him taking the
Everybody
bus.
knows this story.
The story goes that half of John's Park and Waterford were on the bus.
Yes.
But the true story is Sammy was on the bus on his own.
Yeah.
He never picked up anybody, he never took fares, he never dropped
And
anybody
he never
off.
stopped even. until
And he
got off.
stopped until he stopped at the corner of the car stand. That's where he was stopped. But I remember getting up to go to work up in Betty Connolly's that
Sorry,
morning.
hang on, he came across a bus that was.
Sorry, yeah.
The,
he was left in
the,
the-
the conductors now used to go off for their break, so he just sat in on the bus.
The bus depot, the old bus depot was on the quay at the time, where around
Next
where
to
it is now.
Dewey's.
And he was waiting to go. He was meeting his girlfriend in Tramore, and he wanted to get the bus out to Tramore. And the two lads were on their break, so Sammy got in on the bus and got in the driver's seat. And whether he decided, the story goes that it was an automatic bus and he pushed something, he didn't know how to stop it, but we'd say no more on that one. But he decided to take the bus for a little spin, so he drove the bus along the quay, around the Mall and up Parnell Street, and he was stopped at the car stand. So he was used to, at that stage he wouldn't stay out overnight very often, but he didn't come in this night anyway. And I got up for work the next morning and he was after arriving in. And my mother said, oh, Sammy, she said, where were you? She said, I'm awake all night worrying about you. What did you do? And Sammy always liked a few drinks. still does to this day. And she said, what did you do? He said, I was in the barracks overnight. Oh my God, she said, what did you do? And he said, I robbed a bus. And my poor mother assumed that he had robbed the conductor. There was conductors on the buses at the time, and she thought he was after taking the money to buy a drink, which was something he never done. He's 63 this year, isn't he? And he's never robbed for his drink. He'd borrow from you, but he'd never rob from you. But she said, oh my God, she said, you didn't rob them. No, ma'am, he said, I robbed the actual bus. And I was sitting at the table having my breakfast, and I remember the colour just draining from my poor mother's face. Because at the time in Waterford, there was a judge called McKay.
Yes, Deadly Henry.
Deadly Henry,
Henry,
used to call him. And he had made some sort of announcement only about a week or two before, because there had been a spate of car robberies in Waterford. And he had said that anybody that took a vehicle was going to jail without even going to court for 6 months, automatic sentence. So she really thought he was going to jail. So he was fined £40, I think it was, at the time, because somebody spoke up for him, and my mother knew somebody and they spoke up for him.
The inspector in the bus office, he said, Sammy was the only driver ever drove it past the key. It always broke down. He said, I'd give him a job, he said, to drive the bus if I could.
He was fined £40 anyway, because I remember giving my father some of my wages to help. I don't know whether anyone else in the family did or not, I can't remember.
I was married.
But I remember giving my father some of my wages to help pay the fine, and we're still waiting for it back, and I think that was 1974. But anyway, that was the story of Sammy and the bus, but the story took legs, and you could talk to people now in John's Park.
Who swore they were on it.
They swore they were on it, and they went to Tramore on it and everything.
People going to bingo
But I do remember not having
Scott.
to pay a fare on a bus for a long time after that. And I remember my sister Josephine was going to school, still going to school at the time, and she was sitting in an exam, and she was sitting at the desk, and someone came into the room with a cup of tea to give to the woman that was sitting there while they were doing their exams, and said to the teacher, or whatever she was, oh my God, did you hear about that fella last night, that lunatic that took the bus and drove it to Tramore? And Josephine was sitting in the class, and she said, I just remember my head going down like that. Oh, please don't let him know that this was my brother.
But it's a famous story in Waterford.
He's still joining out on that story, let me tell you.
Definitely, yeah.
But even young lads like that, he'd be talking to him and that, and he was always a great pool player. He could have made something as a pool player, but he didn't. But he was always a great pool player and a great snooker player. And he'd be saying to young lads, come here and I'll show you how to take that shot and all that. And they'd say, who are you? And he'd say, oh, I'm Sammy Winters. Oh, you're the fella my father be talking about that you robbed the bus.
That's it.
Yeah, it's you could go on and on, couldn't you? Yeah, you could.
That's great.
I was in the Metropole one night. There had been, the particular year, there'd been a lot of people went into the river. And the headmaster at the Ballybeck School, his son had drowned, and everyone had been at the funeral. So we went into the Metropole that night, and these 3 lads with two boys and a girl, and a boy and a girl with English accents, and this other lad, and got chatting to him at the bar and about where at the funeral and whatever. And the English fellow, he was mouting, and I said, wait, I'm from South London, and I said, I say you're from Kildare. And I didn't know where he was from, but it was only, and the girl said to me, how did you know? And he was from Kildare originally, but I didn't know, I was just something came out. But anyway, we got talking about one thing and another. And he said, I only ever knew one Waterford person, and I was in such a club in London, and I was South London champion snooker player. And this little Waterford twerp came in, 6 foot tall, full of drink, and beat me. And he's still South London champion. I said, you'll never guess who that is. Do you know him? He said, I said, that's my brother. So it was Sammy he was talking about.
So he was a really good student.
Oh, he
He
was
was fantastic.
Yeah.
He could have made a living from the snooker, but
Yeah, he played Alex Higgins, I think, when he was in the horrors on some race somewhere in the artery or something, and beat him.
Yeah, you bet Alex Higgins.
Bet Alex Higgins,
from one of them visits.
But the children were well fitted now. You know,
Which
well,
club did he play with then? Which snooker place?
He used to be
he
in
used to be
Solly's.
down in
Solly's.
No, is there
he
one
was in
before
Solly's,
that?
but he used to be in, what was the
the young men's, was it? Was that what it was
CY.
called?
The CY.
Oh,
He
that's
used to
it,
be down
yeah,
at the CY
yeah.
down on Parnell Street. And that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I've getting back to the bus story. I remember the following summer, I think it was, or it might have been later the same summer, coming out of the Atlantic Ballroom at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they used to run buses, back into town, and getting in on the bus, and this bus was jammers, jam-packed. There wasn't a seat to be got on it. And out comes Sammy and steps in the bus, and the bus driver was out having a fag, and Sammy sits in the seat, and you never saw a bus emptying so fast in all your life. they jumped off it. And I was saying, well, feel free, if you want to drive me home, I'll go with you.
Yeah, he got miles and miles and miles, years and years out of that
Still going
incident.
strong.
Yeah, and it was innocent enough, I suppose, in
Yeah,
his
yeah.
day. You know, it was. Yeah.
But it was a bit mad though.
Yeah.
It's kind of mad
Waterford's
story.
time.
The mother buying him a suit out of Peter France. Peter France was always closing down. She bought him a suit, and he went off out, and he came back in the next day in a pair of jeans and a different shirt. And my mother said, "That's the lovely suit I bought you, Sammy. I met one of my friends out in Tramorn. At that time, they wouldn't let you into the dance halls with jeans on you."
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, jeans on him." He said, "Your man wouldn't leave me in." So he said, "I spoke to her, my man going to the dance." And he gave your man the brand new suit. My poor mother was paying it off on the Never Never.
Yeah, the things like that. You could get your groceries and stuff on the Never Never.
Yeah. That was normal, wasn't it?
Oh, that was,
it
everyone
was,
did
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone
You got him on this Friday,
Down
you
to
went down and got all
Giles
the
shop.
groceries, and then you paid him for that the next Friday, and then you went down and you paid him for last week, and you got the next Friday. You know, it was
Went
silly,
on,
really. But you could, yeah. But Sammy was inclined now, he used to be smoking, and he'd be going down and getting. My mother said put that in the back of the book. And then she wouldn't know anything about it, like, you see. And then maybe 2 months later, the shopkeeper had called her and he said, "What about that little matter in the back of the book?" What's in the back of the book? But it'd be, she got up £50, like, panicking. Am I going to pay my kid that junk bill? But he got a lift or a taxi home or something one night. Some fellow he was with, and he was bringing him home to our house. You know, they come in. And so anyway, they got out of the taxi. They was out here, all well drunk, out of the taxi. So they out of the taxi anyway and into the house. Like in those days, everyone's key was in the door. So anyway, he went to put on the kettle, and he went to the fridge. And he was looking, no ham. My mother had a bit of ham or something for my father's lunch or whatever. And then he went for do something else, and he looked around and he said, "Oh, jeez, I'm in the wrong house." He was in Morden's house down the road. The two of them run quick. Let's come out of the house and run up to our house. Didn't realise it drunk, yes, he got out. And like I said, keys could have been anyone's house. You know. So you think of it less. But a lot of that, you know, that went on a lot. You know, there'd be a couple of families, one particular family, they used to, every Sunday morning they'd have a fight. Every Sunday morning, we'd come up from Mass and they'd be fighting on the street. But they were the best, they were a lovely, good family, you know, they're nice people. And but the lads would always have a fight on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, but it'll be very rare now compared to the fights on the street that you
Yeah,
see
these
now.
were
It
only
wouldn't be
little
anything
brothers
like it.
killing one another. Well, they were
They'd be kids,
teenagers,
yeah,
like,
but
yeah.
I mean,
But-
so that's another thing about John's Park, actually. There's no such thing as a feud. If there was a fight between two teenagers or two men or whatever, that's what it was. It was a fight.
Yeah.
There wasn't a family feud. They didn't go after your wife and your children
No,
like they do
no.
Okay, it
nowadays.
was all done.
Yeah.
It was done and
They all
dusted with
done
your
and
fists.
dusted.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
was
and that
always,
was it.
yeah, it
Well,
told
And you'd be
like-
always made to make up. You know, if you fell out with your friend,
Well,
Yeah.
we were.
you know,
no,
you'd have to go and make up with your friend. And my mother was very much into that between us as a family as
Yeah,
well. If we had an argument in the house, you would not be allowed to put your foot on the first step of the stairs to go to bed until you were at the sorting it out. She would not have it.
Yeah.
And she was the same if you had friends on the street, and you know, kids would be squabbling. And she'd say, "No, you go out and you make back friends with you'd only have so many friends in your life. Never go to bed on an argument. Always sort it out before you go to bed." She was very much that. And I think a lot of the neighbours around where there was no falling out over your children falling out.
No.
If you went in and said, "Oh, Mammy, Bernie down the road is after hitting me," or whatever, we'll go out and sort it out with her. Why are you coming in here telling me for? And a lot of the mothers on our road in particular, anyway, I think were like that. You know, they say, "No, go out and sort it out amongst yourselves. We're not going out." They didn't go next door and say, "Oh, your daughter hit my daughter."
Which you do see
You know,
now.
this kind of thing.
Well,
They
our
didn't
Annie or
have
someone,
sorted out
she used to be whinging and she'd run in and Mum, so-and-so was that to me. So in the, after so much of it, you know, half the day, get out. The next time you come in, I'm going to murder you. You know, get out. So anyway, the next thing, there was a knock on the door. My mother, I'd kill her, and opened the door in a mad rage, brought her in, bet the head off her, and then realised it was young Kennedy up the road.
So they hit the wrong child.
The wrong child. She had to run up to Annie then. Annie, look, I'm at the baiting show. Now she could do with it anyway, girl, to mind, that's okay. And that was it, like, you know. She bet poor Joan Ked. Joan still talks about it. She was probably being 8 or 10.
Well, we won't say she beat her, but she gave her a couple of
Give her a
things.
good few clatters, yeah, around the head.
Make her
You
sound
know.
like a right.
You do in a blind temper, you know, constantly answering the door to children, you know. And she bet poor Joan. Joan still talks about it, yeah. I got killed.
Mistaken identity.
That's it.
Listen, lads, thanks very much for that. That's
Oh,
I
brilliant.
hope we didn't bore them
No,
all.
it's
up
lovely.
there.
No,
didn't bore you too.
no, it's
Yeah,
lovely
from
to
the memories,
capture the
Yeah.
family.
Well, most of them in Johns Park, people were like us. We were all the same. We all had, and everyone had a tale to tell, and we had great fun. Then you really go over to the shop, Jackie, and much of that.
Oh yeah, I didn't ask you about some of the characters here in St. John's
And
Park.
Mrs.
Well,
Reed
Nelly
was a
was
character.
definitely a
Nelly was a
character,
character.
yeah.
Jackie, she said, Jackie, old Mr. O'Regan, Jackie O'Regan. Much as them blaze, they're talking to Denny, are you feckin' robber? And no matter what, she always said that to him, you know.
He's
She
always
was,
robber.
you feckin' robber.
And she was
Much
still
as them
coming
sausage,
into
Jackie.
when we were there. She
They're,
called him down.
they're 1 and 6, you feckin' robber. And he used to just, she'd buy him though. That was the thing, you know.
And Jackie
She
O'Regan
was-
used to call all the girls Molly, was it? And all the boys
Oh, I don't remember.
John, was it? He used to, was it
Yeah,
John?
all
I just
girls
remember
Molly,
Jackie
anyway,
O'Regan opened
yeah.
the shop open at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, didn't he? He used to have the shop
Oh,
open
he
really
would.
late.
I
And he'd be
don't
standing
know.
behind the counter with the
fag.
gold flakes cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah.
And he'd be serving you and the ash would be dropping down into what you'd be buying after.
My mother used to have the wood boy and she'd be mashing the spuds and the ash would be in it and the word it tasted lovely.
We didn't know the difference.
I didn't know the difference. Everyone had fags hanging out their mouth then, you know. Went to Jackie and get a fag in a match for a penny or 4 tuppence or
Yeah, you
something.
could buy him. You
Yeah.
could still buy.
I used to get the fag and 2 matches off Peter Ryan. Peter Ryan, a few doors down, opened the shop in his hallway.
Ah, yeah, that's right.
A major and a match, 2 major and a match, or 2 matches or something. I can't remember.
I used to remember, I used to sell, we could still sell single cigarettes and
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
on Betty
Yeah.
Connolly's because a lot of the patients from the hospital
Yeah, they
wouldn't
used
have
to
a lot
buy
of
them
money
loosely, yeah,
and they
yeah.
would come along and they'd buy the cigarette. There was one particular
could,
girl,
yeah.
God love her, she had a bike, I'll never forget her, and she had this big long chain and when she come into the shop, she'd back into the shop and she'd put the bike across the doorway. She was terrified that someone was going to steal this bike. So she used to put the chain through the spokes on the 2 wheels and wrap it all around the handlebars. This would take her about 5 minutes, no one would be able to get in or out of the shop. She'd come in, she'd buy her 1 cigarette and her 1 match and then she'd have to undo the whole lot. She'd do it about 10 seconds in the shop, God love her. And she used to undo the whole lot then and get up on her and go off again.
Yeah. When you think of it, yeah, I really like Johns Park. Now, the funny thing about it, I moved to Ballybeg 40 years ago, and they started to build the houses down below Giles there. Well, what's it called
Yeah.
now? Centra. And the rent man said to me one day, if you want to, you could get one of them now, he said, because you're from Johns Park, if you wanted to go. But I was happy enough where I was,
Yeah.
you know. So
I
I
was
loved it
like-
so much I
stayed.
did come back.
I'd
Yeah,
move back to Johns
I
Park
stayed.
tomorrow. It's the only housing estate I would move back. You know, I'm in a housing estate. I'm not going to move to another one. But I would move back to Johns Park if I got the option. Yeah, definitely. I love Johns Park. John
Yeah, her
Park.
sister Catherine always says that she lives in the
Yeah.
country and she's married to a countryman, so she hasn't a hope because he's not going to move in from the country.
Yeah, it
But she's
wouldn't
always
bother me
saying
living.
that,
I'm
she'll
happy
move
where
back
I
to
am. I'm 40 years there.
Yeah,
No,
she's
20.
such good memories though.
Yeah,
That's
that's the memories, and you know, and
Well,
there's
I
a
think
lot of
memories
people,
are rare
a few
now.
people around that I know from Johns Park are living in.
Well,
Yeah,
I didn't
memories
want
of
to
rare
live in
my own
Ballybeg, and I
children.
got a house in Ballybeg, and I was there one day. I was 5 years trying to get out of it when I moved in. Like, I bought the house in the end. I'm nearly 30 years out there now, but I remember looking out the window one day. I live in a big square, and I'd say every 3rd or 4th house was someone from Johns Park.
Yeah,
And
living
they're
in
all
it, so
out.
you
I
were
said,
like,
what am I
yeah.
finding to get out of here for? They're all out here.
Yeah, she was
all
McCabe
there,
from second
yeah.
next door there. She's second next door to me.
Yeah, they're all, you know, they're all just Johns Park.
And I rarely
Manchester
knew
Brown
children
is
in Johns
cute,
Park. My daughter was 2 now when we moved out
Yeah,
here, all
sure.
right. But she has no memory of living anywhere else only Johns Park, like, and all the young lads, all there's loads of children around, like our son's age, and our daughter's age, but mostly the boys used to come in. We built an extension onto the back of our house, so our original front room, which is very small, was always vacant. So they used to all come in there and they'd be playing games in the winter time and that. Because they all, any of them, if I see any of them today, they're all in their 30s now, like, here's our second mammy. They all spent their childhood in our house, like, you know. And it was a great place to rear your children as well as be reared in yourself. You know, we had good neighbours all around us up where I'm living as well. Like,
Oh,
you
they were
know.
great neighbours.
Great
you know,
neighbours,
great
yeah.
I
neighbours
don't
in
actually
Johns
know
Park.
anyone that was raised in Johns Park that said they didn't like it. I've never met anyone in my life.
Well,
So
it's
far,
unusual.
anyway, so far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I don't
I've never
remember
heard
all the
anyone
people that
either.
they remember, Mary especially now. But
They all,
I think
they all
poor
like
Jackie
it.
is looking in the door there. I think he's waiting for his turn. He's in
Is he?
front of the
Yeah.
drink up all the
can't
Yeah,
shut
we
us
will
up.
go.
This
Just
is
thanks a
5
million,
o'clock.
lads.
No problem, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
You probably weren't born when I left.
Two boys are falling asleep now.
I I'd say you're sorry you started that. You thought we'd
No,
never
okay,
stop.
mind yourself.